Very good evening to everyone. We are here with Christina with yet another session. Before she had presented on another topic, now she is presenting on the new topic, which is very much useful for a medical student or medical graduate. And she is a second year naturopathic medical student at Canadian College of Naturopathic Medicine. And she did bachelor's in molecular biology, immunology, disease, and neuroscience at University of Toronto and graduated in 2019. I welcome you, Christina, from our whole team on this platform once again for the same kind of approach what you are taking forward. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for having me again. It's lovely to be here. And as you said before, if you haven't seen the previous video, I highly recommend that you do because there's the information about whole foods and how to eat whole foods. And in order to get the full picture of this topic, it's about the importance of eating nutrients for our body. So just to give you a little summary, in the last session on the YouTube platform, I talked about the importance of eating whole foods and the impact it has on chronic inflammatory diseases. And in this session, I will be taking that idea, but gearing it more towards the brain. It's all about the brain today and how its function relies on molecules we consume solely through foods. So here's an introduction to nutritional neuroscience. Next slide. So let's define what nutritional neuroscience is to begin with. I think it's important to have like a little bit of basis to what it is. So it's an emerging interdisciplinary field of research that seeks to understand nutrition's impact on cognition and brain health across the lifespan. So as soon as one is a fetus, all the way to the last stages of life, and everything all in between. Every aspect of life is heavily reliant on what we consume through foods. And the components we're specifically looking at are through the diet, such as minerals, vitamins, protein, carbohydrates, fats, even dietary supplements, synthetic hormones, and food additives. And that might not be some of the more common ones we think of, but they do play a huge role in our brain health, more specifically on neurochemistry, neurobiology, and ultimately behavior and cognition. Next slide. Why is this important? Why is nutritional neuroscience even a thing? Why should we consider its importance? Well, first off, our brain normally receives 15% of our heart's output and uses around 20% of oxygen consumed. And if you think about it, that's a lot of resources just delegated to for brain function. And even though we heavily rely on our other organs, like previously mentioned, the heart and the lungs, to keep our brain functioning, our brain requires many nutrients for the foundation of healthy aging. So this whole PowerPoint is basically focusing on promoting healthy brain aging. That's the whole topic. And this is important because globally there will be a rise in the elderly population. So I found a statistic in the US. So between 2012 and 2050, the US will experience a significant growth in its older population, with the size of the population aged 65 and older almost doubling from an estimated 43.1 million to 83.7 million by 2050. And that's a lot. That's almost doubled. And I'm sure if you check the statistics of your country, you would also see a really high increase as well in the elderly population. So we kind of have to gear our focus to how this population is physically doing, but also we have to remember about the mental aspects as well. Is there premature cognition decline? Is there more degenerative diseases coming through in this population? And all of these are super important to think of. And also the bigger picture is what is playing a part of this if this is happening, and it is happening. And obviously, as you know, as you age, there is a natural decline in cognitive function. However, again, we want to prevent premature decline and or serious conditions such as Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, multiple sclerosis. These are all very serious and we need to tackle this. And in order to do this, we need optimal nutrition, which will will serve to preserve cognitive function, also slow down the progression of aging and reducing the incidences of these diseases in the healthy aging populations. Next slide, please. So before I start, I want to just put it out there. Everything I'm going to say is not medical advice. It's only for educational purposes. If you are considering any changes to your diet or adding any supplements, always talk to your primary healthcare provider first. Next slide. So here's the big question. What are the nutrients that are important for brain health and function? And there's a lot. I'm just going to put it out there. There's tons and tons and tons, and it obviously depends on what your needs are as an individual and what stage you are in life. But these are just the general ones that are super important to look at. So first one is omega-3 fatty acids. These are found mostly in fish like salmon, flax seeds, and just a reminder for you guys, there's ground flaxseed and then just regular flaxseed. When you want to get omega-3 fatty acid, you want the flax seeds to be grounded up because the actual fatty acid molecules are inside the tough barrier of the flax seed. So if you're just consuming flax seeds normally, you're gonna just get fibrous components of it and not the actual omega-3 fatty acids. So grind them up. Also krill, chia seeds, kiwi, butternuts, walnuts, all these are high in omega-3 fatty acids. And why they're important is because a lot of studies found that eating or consuming omega-3 fatty acids ameliorated the cognitive decline in the elderly. And also another study found that lower red blood cell DHA, which is a component of fatty acids, there's EPA and DHA. These levels are associated with smaller brain volumes and vascular pattern of cognitive impairment. And that's really impactful because when you think about it, they're not saying that if you have a smaller brain that you're going to have a decline in cognitive function. What they're saying is that they found a correlation or an association between people who weren't consuming a lot of omega-3 fatty acids and how they had smaller brain volume, and also the vascular pattern change, which is super important. Another nutrient, and it's a big topic now, is vitamin D because of COVID. There's a lot of studies on vitamin D, but with vitamin D, in terms of cognitive health, they found neuroprotective effects, so preventative effects consuming an appropriate amount of vitamin D, and it also improves intellect performance in a study they found, a recent study. And where you can find vitamin D, fish liver, fatty fishes, mushrooms, fortified products. So like when you buy plant-based milk, like almond or oat milk, sometimes they fortify it with different vitamins and also cereal grains. Next molecule, B vitamins. There's a lot of B vitamins. So like B1, B6, B9, B12, all have neuroprotective effects. And they also found that low levels of B12 have been associated with the onset of dementia, which is really big because a lot of people here in North America are either vitamin D deficient or vitamin B deficient, B12 deficient. So that's something to look at. Where you can find B vitamins, animal liver, seafood, eggs, legumes, nutritional yeast, and spirulina for vegans. Oops, sorry. Also, vitamin E is another one. They found that it reduces cognitive delay in the elderly. And where you can find vitamin E is asparagus, avocado, peanuts, olives, spinach, a bunch of vegetable oils, sunflower seeds, and fortified foods. But also, I just want to point it out there, just because vitamin E is found in vegetable oils, you don't want to overconsume vegetable oils because they are inflammatory for your bodily systems. Next page, please. And here's a few more nutrients. So carotenoids, which gives the pigments to different fruits and vegetables. So like yellow, orange, red pigments, and the antioxidants found in carotenoids, they delay cognitive decline in the elderly, similar to the other nutrients. And where you can find them is like carrots, pumpkin, apricots, beets, pink grapefruit, sweet potato, squash. Those are all high in carotenoids. Also, iron is a really big one. I posted a link at the end of my PowerPoint discussing how iron is super important for the growing fetus. So it's required for many fundamental biological processes in the brain. So they listed a lot I found in research. So I just added one here, like myelin synthesis. And myelin is very important for axonal transmission along the axon. So it's required there. And where you can find iron, it's high in red meats, fish, poultry, lentils, and beans. And one of the last ones is choline. They found that higher choline intake was related to better cognitive performance, and you can find high choline in egg yolk, soy beef, chicken, turkey liver, lettuce, and there's a lot more nutrients like magnesium. Even curcumin was found to have an importance in brain health, so there's just many. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. Okay, so all the nutrients I just talked about, does that mean I have to supplement with all these? And obviously, no, it's unrealistic. It's very expensive if you were to do that, and ultimately it would be useless. So what do you do instead? You're gonna eat whole foods, find fruits and vegetables, find foods that have high content of the previously mentioned nutrients, because that's the way to go, and that's how you nourish your body and ultimately your brain. And the reason why this is because the nutrients I listed previously are biochemical markers of dietary exposure. So for example, they test the vitamin D in the blood as a biomarker for how much vitamin D you consume through diet and not through supplementation. So the table here on the slide on the right is from a study, and they presented many examples of biomarkers studied through blood serum levels. And again, these are just some of them, and they measure individual intake of certain vitamins and inorganic compounds. So when you look at a study, you want to ensure that the blood serum levels that they're testing the molecules on are biomarkers, because just because vitamin D is high in the blood or low in the blood, that doesn't mean that you necessarily supplement more vitamin D for you. It's basically just a biomarker showing if you have high vitamin D levels in your blood, that means that you're intaking lots of fruits and vegetables that have high vitamin D content. And that's the thing that we're looking for, and that's the thing that's important. Next slide, please. So what's the difference between supplementation and eating? Are not found in supplements. So for example, if you eat a red pepper, it has carotenoids because of the red pigment, but also there's a high content in vitamin C. When you take a supplement, you're just kind of taking one concentration of that nutrient and nothing else. Another important thing is there are essential fibers found in whole foods, so like whole grains, fruits, veggies, which can help reduce the risk of different comorbidities such as stroke, heart disease, and type 2 diabetes. When you take a supplement, you're not really getting that per se. And also a really big one is that there is a synergistic and interactive effect eating whole foods rather than just taking a single pill of a certain concentration. So if you look at that diagram there, I circled this, it looks like a spider web, and that's basically some of the nutrients I previously discussed that are important for brain function. There's a lot more you could see, and see how interactive each nutrient is with one another. Like it's very interactive, and we don't know if it's a synergistic effect per se, or is it more an interactive, one helps the other, one enhances the other. We don't really know, but all we know is that there is this interactive effect, and that's the bigger picture. So when you're eating whole foods, you're eating many different kinds of fibers, fruits and vegetables, antioxidants, and all that, and they all act within one another when you consume it. And that's the cognitive enhancement. That's where it's coming from, and not through just supplementation. Next slide, please. Okay, perfect. So we just talked about the importance of certain nutrients for our brain function and eating whole foods. But how do we apply this to real life? That's probably one of the biggest questions. How do we do this in real life? Well, there's many studies researching the health of different diets. So for example, many studies looked at the Mediterranean diet, which composes of vegetables, fruits, herbs, nuts, beans, and whole grains. Meals are built around plant-based foods. There's moderate amounts of dairy, poultry, and egg. Seafood is also a staple in the Mediterranean diet, and they don't really eat red meats. It's only eaten occasionally. And then next, they also studied the DASH diet, which is a dietary approach to stop hypertension or high blood pressure. And this diet emphasizes foods that are low in sodium, as well as rich in potassium, magnesium, and calcium. And then lastly, they looked at another diet, which I haven't heard of until I did research on this. It's called the MIND diet, which is the Mediterranean and DASH intervention for neurodegenerative delay. So this diet is basically focusing on how to prevent neurodegenerative delay. And it encourages one to consume vegetables, berries, nuts, whole grains, olive oil, fish, beans, poultry, and even wine. And you could see some of the nutrients found on our list previously discussed before. So for example, olive oil, that's high in omega-3. And there's different berries, vegetables, all of them contain the previously discussed nutrients for brain or cognitive function, which is really important. And they found that higher adherence to a healthy dietary pattern is associated with the preservation of brain structure and function, as well as slower cognitive decline with the MIND diet, substantially slowing cognitive decline over and above just the Mediterranean and DASH diet. So you could see how a combination of these healthy dietary patterns actually enhance the preservation of brain structure and even slowing cognitive decline. So you could see the interactive process also happening here with the nutrients, which is really cool to see. Next slide, please. Okay, so I think this is also another star question from today's presentation. So we learned how higher adherence to a healthy dietary pattern may benefit the preservation of brain structure and function, and also slow down cognitive decline. And with this, we can prevent measures by eating whole foods. But at this point in time, can I physically change my brain? Or in other words, can I rewire my brain? If I'm not eating healthy right now, is it possible for me to start eating healthy and possibly slow cognitive decline? And there is a yes and no to this question, basically, just to put it in simple terms. So first, let's define what neuroplasticity means. So neuroplasticity refers to the brain's ability to adapt by forming new connections and pathways. It allows neurons or nerve cells in the brain to compensate for injury and disease, and to adjust their activities in response to new situations and changes to our environment. And this is so important because as we navigate through the world and throughout different stages of our lives, we need our brains to be able to adapt to these new situations and new environments. Because if we don't, then we will get into serious problems. So how can we do this? How can we rewire my own brain? That sounds very intangible. But the aging brain can adapt through cellular defense mechanisms. So our immune system of our brain, so our microglia, our astrocytes, those are all important defense mechanisms. The blood-brain barrier, for sure, that's a big one. Also, we can do redox reactions, so many molecular reactions. We can do DNA repair. We can release neurotrophins, which are immune regulatory molecules around our body, so like IGF-1. We can even promote neurogenesis, and I know that was a hot topic. Can we actually grow brain tissue? And to an extent, yes, we are capable of growing or regenerating dendrites and synapses in order to change in response to environmental stress or chemical stress. And all of these concepts depend on food and the best nutritional foods and supplements, and also hormones and physical activity and learning procedures. So even though I'm just talking about nutrition in this aspect of the presentation, we have to remember that that's just one pillar to cognitive function. We have to always remember there's others. So having good sleep is really important, because if you're eating healthy but not getting enough sleep or proper good quality sleep, it kind of doesn't really matter to an extent, because you're not looking at the sleep aspect. Or if you're not having enough physical exercise, you may get premature cognitive decline, or if you're not having hormone balance properly within your body. There's just so many things, and nutrition is one pillar. So the reason why I say there's a yes and no to this part of the question is, yes, nutrition is one aspect that plays an important role, but to an extent. So for example, it's very, very, very hard to change the wiring of one's brain who already has a chronic degenerative disease such as Alzheimer's or Parkinson's. So therefore, nutrition, as well as the other pillars like sleep, exercise, hormone regulation, stress, are all important and need to be considered for neuroplasticity. These are all preventative measures one can take to support the healthy aging brain and ultimately reduce the risk of neurodegenerative diseases. Next slide, please. Thanks. So here's the takeaways for the whole presentation. So eat whole foods packed with a variety of micronutrients, antioxidants, and fiber. Again, because we saw that eating a variety of these foods contain like a additive or interactive effect with one another. So like vitamin D, vitamin E, choline, B vitamins, omega-3, iron, carotenoids, all of these interact with each other. And the more diverse your diet is, the better it is. And then another one is preservation of brain structure and function, as well as slow cognitive decline. So all we want to do now, since most of us are probably young and watching this, even in middle age as well, we can always be preventative with our brain cognition. Eat whole foods and maybe even follow the mind diet if that's something that interests you. Always talk to your healthcare provider first. Just do anything you can to slow cognitive decline and promote healthy aging of the brain. That's our main goal here. And the last one is we can promote a healthy aging of our brain via nutritional neuroplasticity in order to prevent neurodegenerative diseases. So eat nutritious foods, and we can rewire our brain and our neuroplasticity basically. And next slide. That's my references. And next slide. Yep. If you have any questions, I'm on Instagram, Appleton Wellness. I have a bunch of other health related content there. And here's the link again. If anyone's interested in early life nutrition and neuroplasticity, this article is really, really good in terms of they give like a bunch of different tables showing what nutrients are crucial or conditionally essential for the growing fetus and even just infants in general, which I really liked a lot. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And I do not know like the words we will learn from you, the concepts which were known to everyone, but the concept we are taking through a research process. So it's evidence-based medicine, what we are understanding, and that's is required in our system of naturopathic medicine. Because we do
Yeah.
talk a lot about many things, but if it comes from the research background, it is the very perfect approach from the student side. And I hope your content will reach to our students and your students or your juniors or colleagues, and they will get to know with the research. If we explain a small topic also, it gives a very big significance to the same topic. And
Yeah.
thanks to you, there are one question I wanted to ask, like how you differentiate clinically animal based diet and the human vegetable based diet or plant based diet.
Yeah, that's a big question. That one honestly depends on the individual, because I know I looked at some studies and they showed that the vegan diet isn't for everyone. It depends on what enzymes you're producing in your body. I can't remember the exact one. So I always wouldn't recommend a specific diet for a specific group of people unless they have gone through an intake with an ND or a first healthcare provider, because there's just so many aspects to the individual that is important and at play for diet especially. But what I can give is that um, if you're more on an animal-based diet, you are getting the B12, you are getting iron sources. And I'm not saying that vegan diets don't have that, because there's always supplementation, and even spirulina is a good algae for B12 and that. But with animal-based diet, it's always you have to consider moderation as well. You don't want to be eating like so many like red meats and that, because it's known that a high consumption of red meats is inflammatory and could they found associations with many gut issues like colon. I think it was colon cancer and um, high blood pressure and a bunch of other inflammatory diseases as well. So it's always in moderation. And yeah, that's all I could say about that one.
And that's a very very smart answer, because we can say it's a very big topic if we talk about the animal-based diet and plant-based diet. So once again, thank you so much for concluding a very big topic to a very small presentation of half an hour. And it's a very good approach. We will learn from you. And thank
Thank
you so
you.
much to come on our platform. Thank
Thank you so
you.
much for having me. Yes, thank you so much. It was my pleasure.